Talent shows are built on one promise. Anyone can become a star in 3 minutes or less. Singers, dancers, magicians, daredevils, people who spent years preparing for the one-shot a live audience and a panel of judges would give them. Most of the time, the worst thing that happens is a bad note or a missed trick. Sometimes it isn't. What you're about to see are real moments where live entertainment stopped being entertainment. Every case in this video happened in front of a real audience, with real cameras rolling and real consequences once those cameras stopped. Let's start at the top. When Uzziah Novus walked onto the America's Got Talent stage, he didn't bring fire, explosions, or oversized props. He brought a single ladder. At first, the audience almost laughed. Dressed like a silent film comedian, he made the whole thing look playful, harmless even. But within seconds, the mood in the room changed completely. This wasn't an ordinary ladder. It had no support, no cables, nothing holding it steady except Uzziah's own balance. Step by step, he climbed higher into the air while the ladder shook violently beneath him. Every movement had to be exact. One wrong shift of weight and the whole thing would come down, with him on top of it. As the tension built, Uzziah reached the final stage of his act. Nearly 15 feet above the stage, balancing on the narrow top rung, he attempted to hook a hoop beneath his foot while leaning backward in mid-air. The crowd held its breath. Then it happened. The ladder suddenly tilted backward. For one terrifying moment, Uzziah was suspended in open air with nothing to grab onto. He crashed hard onto the stage in front of an audience of millions watching live. The entire theater froze. Somehow, Uzziah managed to sit back up. He immediately asked the judges for another chance to finish the routine. Live television doesn't have a reset button. Years later, Uzziah returned to a talent show stage and successfully completed the same stunt, the one that had put him on the floor in front of millions the first time. This case opens our list because it's a reminder of something that runs through every story in this video. The cameras don't stop rolling just because something has gone wrong. Ryan Stock had spent the entire season of America's Got Talent impressing the judges. Items up his nose, a blowtorch extinguished on his tongue, a chainsaw held between his teeth. By the live shows, Stock and his fiancée Amber Lynn Walker decided to push their act somewhere they had never gone before. Stock would swallow a long metal rod with a small target fixed to the end. He would bend forward, and Amber Lynn, a trained archer, would fire a flaming arrow at the target now positioned at the back of his throat. The arrow was designed to travel safely down a tube fitted into his esophagus, triggering pyrotechnics as it landed. It was, by Stock's own description, a stunt that had never been attempted anywhere in the world before. Amber Lynn drew the bow. She released. The arrow missed the target completely. It struck Ryan Stock directly in the throat. Host Nick Cannon would later describe what happened next as feeling like it was unfolding in slow motion. Judge Howie Mandel said exactly that he watched the flaming arrow hit Stock in the neck and thought, in that instant, that he was witnessing something fatal happen live on television. Simon Cowell, who had hosted the franchise for over a decade by that point, stopped the broadcast to demand Stock be checked by a medic immediately. On camera, visibly shaken, Cowell said he had never seen anything like it happen on the show before. EMTs reached Stock within moments. After a brief commercial break, Nick Cannon returned to reassure the audience. Ryan was conscious, responsive, and being treated. The arrow had not penetrated. Stock walked away from the stunt with bruising and no serious injury, an outcome that, considering an archer had just fired a live flaming arrow at a fixed target inside her fiancé's throat in front of a national audience, felt closer to luck than to design. Amber Lynn later explained what should have happened. The arrow should have traveled cleanly down the tube and triggered the pyrotechnic effect as planned. Equipment malfunction was blamed. The duo was eliminated from the competition the following night. What makes this case worth including isn't the severity of the outcome. Stock walked away, largely unhurt. It's the sheer scale of what could have gone wrong, broadcast live, with millions of people watching the exact moment an archer's aim failed by inches in front of her own fiancé's face. Before Pedro Volta ever stepped onto the Spain's Got Talent stage, he already knew exactly how deadly the stunt he was about to attempt could become. 1 year earlier, during a similar underwater escape, a strap had become tangled around him. He was trapped beneath the water long enough for his heart to stop completely. For 4 minutes, Pedro Volta was clinically dead before paramedics managed to revive him. Most performers would never attempt that stunt again. Pedro walked straight back into it. In front of a live audience and national television cameras, Pedro was locked inside a sealed water tank wearing a straitjacket. Heavy padlocks sealed the lid above him. At first, everything appeared to be under control. He freed one arm and began working through the remaining restraints underwater while the crowd counted every second out loud. Then the nightmare from a year earlier started to repeat itself. One of the final padlocks refused to open. Pedro twisted and pulled at it desperately, his movement growing slower and more frantic as the oxygen in his lungs ran out. The tension in the theater became genuinely unbearable. Audience members standing, judges leaning forward, the host visibly signaling for medical staff to move closer to the tank. With only seconds remaining, Pedro abandoned the stuck lock entirely and forced himself free through whatever gap he could create, getting out before the moment turned into a repeat of the year before. He survived, but the fear on his face when he broke the surface told a different story than the triumphant escape the show wanted to present. This wasn't just a magic trick anymore. It was a man confronting, in real time and on live television, the exact scenario that had already killed him once. After that performance, Pedro Volta retired the underwater escape permanently. July 21st, 2021. The Barnstable County Fair, Massachusetts. Cyrus Knox climbs onto the Wheel of Destiny, preparing to perform one of the most dangerous circus acts still being performed anywhere in the world. Suspended nearly 30 feet above the ground, the giant rotating steel structure has no safety net, no harness, no margin for error of any kind. Cyrus is part of the nerveless Knox, a circus family with generations of history built around exactly this kind of risk. He had spent his entire life around danger like this. But that night, thousands of spectators at the fair were about to watch how quickly a routine they'd performed countless times could turn into a real emergency. At first, everything looked completely controlled. Cyrus moved across the spinning wheel with total confidence, while the massive structure rotated higher and faster above the crowd. The audience watched in genuine amazement as he balanced on the moving steel frame with nothing beneath him but open air and hard ground. Then, in one terrifying moment, his footing gave way.
Capturing the horrifying moment of impact when 23-year-old Cyrus Knox
Cyrus slipped off the rotating wheel. His body struck part of the metal structure on the way down before hitting the ground below. The fairgrounds fell completely silent. Some people in the crowd assumed it was part of the act, that this kind of near miss was scripted, part of the thrill the nerveless Knox were known for. The silence held until it became clear that Cyrus wasn't getting back up. A doctor in the audience rushed forward. Medics sprinted to the scene. Doctors later confirmed the full extent of his injuries: a collapsed lung, cracked ribs, crushed vertebrae, and a spinal fracture. Somehow, Cyrus Knox survived. August 24th, 2024. A packed theater in Portland. The audience watches Maria Konfetova rise high above the stage inside a spinning aerial hoop. Maria is no novice. She's known across the aerial performance world for her exceptional control, holding a Guinness World Record for aerial hoop rotations. She makes the entire performance look effortless. Nearly 20 feet in the air, with no safety net beneath her, She spins faster and faster while the crowd watches in complete amazement. But hidden inside the act is a mistake nobody in that theater could have noticed. The hoop had been misaligned by just 1 centimeter. On the ground, a 1 centimeter misalignment sounds insignificant. But during a high-speed aerial routine, even the smallest structural error compounds with every rotation. The hoop began pulling unevenly. Maria's movements, usually flawless, became harder and harder to control. With every spin, the problem got worse. Then it happened. Maria lost control entirely and crashed face first onto the stage below.
See Konvektova plummeting to the ground. Benjamin was there with his dad and little sister.
The theater fell into stunned silence. Nearby performers froze, unsure whether what they had just watched was part of the routine or a genuine medical emergency unfolding in front of a paying audience. When medics rushed in, Maria was still conscious, but badly injured. Doctors later confirmed multiple fractures and serious facial injuries that required major surgery. She survived. She eventually returned to performing. What makes this case sit where it does on this list is the scale of the error against the scale of the consequence. 1 centimeter. That's all it took to turn a record-holding performer's signature act into a stage filled with blood and silence. May 4th, 2014. Families pack into a Ringling Brothers circus performance, expecting exactly what the brand had promised audiences for generations. Dazzling lights, impossible acrobatics, classic big top spectacle. 8 female performers rise nearly 40 feet into the air, suspended only by their hair, in a stunt known as the human chandelier. Spinning high above the arena floor, the performers form a giant, rotating circle. The crowd watches in complete amazement. Everything looks elegant, controlled, perfectly choreographed. Hidden above them is a mistake nobody in the building could see. The entire act depended on a single steel carabiner connecting the chandelier rig to the ceiling system above. It was rated to handle enormous weight, but that night, it had reportedly been loaded incorrectly. As the performers spun higher above the audience, pressure built on that single metal clip in a direction it was never designed to handle. Then, without warning, the carabiner failed. The entire human chandelier collapsed from the air. 8 performers fell nearly 40 feet, several of them slamming into another acrobat positioned below before hitting the arena floor in a tangled pile.
Aerial hair-hanging act went terribly wrong. Next.
The audience screamed. Emergency crews rushed into the ring. In an instant, the circus transformed from entertainment into chaos. Several performers suffered serious injuries, broken bones, spinal damage, internal trauma. Some required long recoveries just to walk normally again. Lajana Wenda, one of the performers involved, suffered severe facial fractures. Another family member was left with long-term mobility problems. This act carried a history that made the collapse even harder to process. Decades earlier, a similar pyramid stunt performed by the same family had collapsed during a performance in Detroit, killing 2 performers and permanently injuring another. That tragedy had haunted the family for generations. The 2014 performance was meant to prove they had overcome that history. Instead, it became a reminder that in the world of high-wire stunts, history doesn't always stay in the past. October 14th, 2021. Atlanta Motor Speedway, Georgia. NBC is filming America's Got Talent, Extreme, a new spin-off built entirely around the biggest, most dangerous stunts the franchise had ever attempted, judged by Simon Cowell, Travis Pastrana, and Nikki Bella. Jonathan Goodwin, a Welsh escape artist known professionally as the Daredevil, is rehearsing his stunt for the show. By this point in his career, Goodwin had already been hanged, buried alive, attacked by sharks, bitten by rattlesnakes, and had dodged arrows on camera. He had appeared on the original AGT the year before and made it to the semifinals. This stunt was meant to top everything that came before it. Goodwin is suspended 70 feet in the air, hanging by his feet, wearing a straitjacket. On either side of him, 2 cars are suspended in the air as well, swinging back and forth like pendulums. The plan: Goodwin would free himself from the restraints mid-air, then fall onto an air mattress positioned on the ground, timing his drop perfectly to avoid being struck as the 2 cars swung toward each other and collided. Something went catastrophically wrong. The 2 cars collided with Goodwin caught directly between them. The impact caused both vehicles to explode into a massive fireball. Goodwin fell from the rigging, missing the air mattress that was supposed to break his fall, and dropped 30 feet to the ground, below, striking his head. People on set, in the immediate aftermath, believed he was dead. He was airlifted to a hospital and rushed into emergency surgery. His fiancée, actress Amanda Abington, later said he nearly died twice, once at the scene and again on the operating table. The full extent of his injuries: a dislocated spinal cord, a severed spinal cord, the loss of his left kidney, fractures to both shoulder blades, both legs shattered, fractured ribs, a punctured lung, and extensive third-degree burns. The spinal surgeon who operated on him told Goodwin afterward that his injury was the worst he had ever personally seen, and that there had been a real possibility Goodwin wouldn't survive the surgery itself. He didn't. He survived it. But Jonathan Goodwin is now paralyzed from the waist down. NBC paused production on America's Got Talent, Extreme, for 3 months following the accident. When it eventually aired, the show was shelved entirely after only 4 episodes and was never renewed. In October 2023, Goodwin filed a lawsuit against the production companies behind the show, alleging that lax safety standards directly led to the accident that ended his career and changed his life permanently. 6 months after the accident, Goodwin posted a photo to Instagram, sitting in a wheelchair, his dog on his lap, smiling. He wrote that he had been to the very brink of what a human being can survive, and that love had carried him through it. He has spoken since about wanting to be, in his own words, a role model going forward. A man who spent his entire career making death look survivable on a stunt built specifically to top every stunt that came before it, found the one that didn't let him walk away. This last case is different from everything else on this list. Every case so far has involved a stunt, a height, a blade, a flame, a wire, some element of obvious, visible danger that everyone in the room could see and brace themselves for. This one had none of that. January 2007, Sacramento, California. A local radio station launches a contest that, on paper, sounds completely harmless. The prize: a Nintendo Wii, one of the most sought-after gaming consoles in the country at the time, nearly impossible to find in stores. The challenge: drink as much water as possible without using the bathroom. Last contestant standing wins. The DJs laugh and joke throughout, encouraging listeners to keep tuning in. Nobody on that broadcast, nobody in that studio, believed they were building toward anything other than a fun, slightly ridiculous morning radio segment. Jennifer Strange, a 28-year-old mother of 3, enters the competition. Friends described her as caring and hard-working, someone who wanted to surprise her kids with the console. As the contest stretched on, contestants were pushed to drink more and more water while the hosts kept the broadcast light and entertaining throughout. After several rounds, Jennifer began showing signs that something was seriously wrong: severe headaches, dizziness, intense stomach pain. Witnesses who were there later said she looked exhausted and visibly uncomfortable. But she kept going, trying to stay in the competition. Here is the detail that makes this case sit at the very bottom of this list. Reports later confirmed that a nurse had called into the station during the live broadcast specifically to warn that consuming excessive amounts of water in a short period could be dangerous, potentially fatal. Despite that warning, the contest continued, broadcast live, while contestants visibly struggled. Jennifer eventually lost the competition and went home empty-handed. Co-workers later remembered her saying she felt terrible and needed to rest. Hours later, Jennifer Strange passed away from water intoxication, a condition where the body takes in more water than it is able to safely process, leading to a fatal imbalance. The story exploded across national news. Listeners were horrified after hearing recordings from the broadcast where contestants sounded increasingly distressed while the hosts continued making jokes in the background. Lawsuits followed. The station faced significant backlash, and several employees connected to the contest were dismissed. What makes Jennifer Strange's case so different from everything else in this video is how ordinary it all looked at the start. No height, no fire, no blade, no safety net to fail. Just a radio contest, a DCA, video game console, and a mother who wanted to make her kids happy. A nurse called in and warned them. The contest kept going anyway, and within a single day, an ordinary morning show segment became a tragedy that permanently changed the conversation about how far entertainment is allowed to push people for the sake of an audience. 8 moments, 8 stages, arenas, and studios where the line between performance and real danger disappeared in seconds. A ladder with nothing holding it up. A flaming arrow that missed by inches. A man who walked back into the exact stunt that had already killed him once. A wheel with no net beneath it. A hoop misaligned by 1 centimeter. A carabiner loaded wrong. 2 cars that collided around a man hanging by his feet. And a water contest that a nurse warned them to stop. Every single one of these moments happened in front of an audience that came expecting entertainment. Some of these performers walked away with bruises. Some never walked the same way again. One never went home at all. The cameras kept rolling through every second of it. Drop the case that stayed with you in the comments, and if this video got to you, you already know what to do.